The reserve list might be one of the biggest mistakes Wizards ever made. It has caused many powerful old cards to become prohibitively expensive for most players. It's basically killing formats like Legacy and Vintage, and if you watched my CEDH video, it's why I think proper Wizards supported CEDH tournaments is never going to take off. I really hate the reserve list. One thing people don't realize about the reserve list though, is there are a ton of underplayed cards on it. And that's what I wanted to talk about this month on Better Than a Booster, a series where I recommend budget cards to buy that cost less than a pack. This time it's all reserve list cards that cost less than $8, which is the cheapest I could find a pack of Modern Horizons 3. Let's start with the card on the thumbnail, Brand of Ill Omen. And remember, I'm reading the Oracle text. A lot of these old cards don't have the same text on the actual card, so keep that in mind. 3 and a red for an aura enchant creature. Cumulative upkeep, pay a red. Which means on your first upkeep after this card is in play, you have to pay a red, and then red, red, and then red, red, red to keep it in play. Enchanted creature's controller can't cast creature spells. So this card really needs to be in mono red so you can consistently pay the cumulative upkeep, but Brand of Ill Omen can be a very powerful card. Let's say your opponent is playing some creature-focused deck, like Animar. They cast their commander and plan to cast more creatures afterwards. But on your turn, you enchant it with this. Now, their deck is temporarily shut down. They can't cast creatures until they get rid of this enchantment. They could make a deal with some other player to attack and have their Animar die, but that's also not very bad for you. If you enchant something on their creature and they have to lose their commander and recast it, that's a huge deal. Or if you play this on your opponent's creature before they cast their commander, now they're locked out of their commander. Plus, spending 1 or 2 red here or there to super slow down a creature-based deck is really powerful. You're basically skipping their turn every single time you keep it in play. And this card is such a powerful stacks piece, yet it's only $1 and on the reserve list. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of sorcery speed removal, but Phyrexian Purge is an exception. 2 black-red for a sorcery. This spell costs 3 more life to cast for each target. Destroy any number of target creatures. This card is very simple. It's spot removal, but you can pay extra life to remove more creatures. I think paying 6 life for this and making it a 2-for-1 is pretty good. And if you can spare the extra life, especially if you're in a life gain deck of some sort, hitting 3 or 4 creatures off of this is very good. And it's only around $3. The Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale is an incredibly powerful and incredibly expensive card. It's so good at slowing down creature decks, and being a land makes it so difficult to interact with. This is a staple card in many legacy decks. But with that insane price tag, it's hard to get your hands on. Pendrell Mists does a pretty good impression of the Tabernacle at only $7. 3 and a blue for an enchantment. All creatures have, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this creature unless you pay 1. Since this is an enchantment, it's a little easier to remove than the actual Tabernacle, but if you're having trouble keeping up with decks that go wide, this can be a very powerful tool to slow those decks down. If you saw Brand of Ill Omen and thought about a mono red deck to use it in, try swapping out your mountains for snow-covered mountains and play Glacial Crevasses. 2 and a red for an enchantment. Sacrifice a snow mountain, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. This is just a repeatable fog. If you have snow-covered mountains, you can easily use this to deter attackers and stop attackers if they actually decide to swing. That's kind of it. This card is very simple and very effective, especially if you have a Crucible of Worlds to keep getting your lands back. And at $3, I think it's worth playing. Halls of Mist is another card that can make attacking difficult. Wizards really did like hating on creatures back in the day. Hall of Mist is a land that does not tap for mana. It has cumulative upkeep 1, and creatures that attacked during their controller's last turn can't attack. So creatures can only attack every other turn, basically. It's another card that really slows down aggressive creature decks. But instead of stopping go wide decks like Pendrell, this is really great at stopping go tall decks. If they have one big creature, attacking with it every other turn is devastating. And since it's a land, this is pretty difficult for your opponents to interact with. The Halls of Mist does affect you as well, so keep that in mind. But if you're playing a Pillow Fort type deck, then this $4 land can be a very powerful layer of protection. Another thing old cards did a lot was mess with lands of specific types. Shimmer is a $3 card that can mess with lands. 2 blue for an enchantment. As Shimmer enters the battlefield, choose a land type. Each land of the chosen type has phasing, meaning the lands are going to come in and out of play during each untap step, causing players to lose half their lands here and there. So this can destroy a monocolor deck, but what if you're not against a monocolor deck? Well, you can use cards like Urborg and Yavimaya to turn all lands into a swamp or forest and have this affect all lands in play. You can use this to slow down one player if they just have 3 or 4 swamps in play. You can just remove 4 of their mana every other turn. And if you're in a 4 or 5 color deck, you could play a lot of lands that have no land type that tap for multiple colors. This way you won't be affected by the Shimmer. This is a stacks card that really does need to be built around. I wouldn't recommend it in any random deck, but in the right build, this can be very powerful. As the Trinket Mage, I try to jam silly baubles into lots of decks. And this triangular bauble is a great one. 1 generic for an artifact. Pay 2, sacrifice the triangle, target creature you control, fights target creature an opponent controls. Another very simple card. It just lets creatures fight each other, which is great removal in a low colored deck. You could make your colorless commander fight another creature to remove it. But it's also an artifact, so you can use it with cards like Academy Ruins, Salvaging Station, or Silas Wren, allowing you to recur this and fight multiple things. The triangle is a great fight spell that you can add to any deck for just $3. Inner Sanctum is a cool card that I'm surprised I don't see more often. White 1 for an enchantment. With cumulative upkeep, pay 2 life. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. It's less than $2 and has a pretty powerful effect. Another cumulative upkeep card, though in my experience, those that have you pay life instead of mana are much better. This card is really great for creature-based decks. You don't lose your creatures in combat, and you can block for free. But I actually think it's best in a Boros list. You can play red damage-based board wipes and turn all of those into one-sided board wipes. Also, Inner Sanctum works really well with Triangle of War. One of my favorite decks I've built recently is my Heliod Draw-Go control deck. I will eventually get around to making a video about this deck, but I have been testing out this $1 reserve list card, Jabari's Influence. 3 white for an instant. Cast this spell only after combat. Gain control of target non-artifact, non-black creature that attacked you this turn, and put a -1/-0 counter on it. I love this card in any deck that can make a lot of chump blockers. Your unsuspecting opponent attacks you with some non-artifact, non-black creature, you chump block, and then boom, you yoink their commander or whatever. It's a really fun gotcha card. People don't expect you to steal their creature permanently in mono white. Give it a try, it's a lot of fun. Chameel the Inner Sun is a very powerful colorless draw engine, but it's not very budget. So if you want more card draw in your colorless deck, mono white deck, mono red deck on a budget, try Temporal Aperture for just $4. 2 generic for an artifact. Pay 5, tap. Shuffle your library. Then reveal the top card of your library until end of turn for as long as that card remains the top of your library. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the card without paying its mana cost. So this is basically the activated ability of Urza. I love that it specifically says play, so if you hit a land, you can just play the land. And I know 5 mana for 1 card might seem like a lot, but if you think about the fact that you get to cast the spell for free, you can easily make up that mana investment. The randomness is rough at times, but when you flip into some big bomb, it feels tremendously powerful. So those are my budget picks for this month. What did you think? Do you play any of these? Have you even heard of any of these cards? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so very much for watching. If you like my content, consider supporting me on Patreon, like my tier 3 patrons whose names you see here.